Orvieto Cathedral is a large 14th-century Roman Catholic cathedral dedicated to the Assumption of the Virgin Mary and situated in the town of Orvieto, in Umbria, central Italy. Formerly the episcopal seat of the Diocese of Todi, it has been since 1986 that of the Diocese of Orvieto-Todi. The building was constructed under the orders of Pope Urban IV to commemorate and provide a suitable home for the Corporal of Bolsena, a miracle which is said to have occurred in 1263 in the nearby town of Bolsena, when a traveling priest who had doubts about the truth of transubstantiation found that his host was bleeding so much that it stained the altar cloth. The cloth is now stored in the chapel of the Corporal inside the cathedral. Situated in a position dominating the town of Orvieto, which sits perched on a volcanic plug, the cathedral's facade is a classic piece of religious construction, containing elements of design from the 14th to the 20th century, with a large rose window, golden mosaics and 3 huge bronze doors, while inside resides 2 frescoed chapels decorated by some of the best Italian painters of the period with images of Judgment Day. The cathedral has 5 bells, dating back to Renaissance, tuned in E-flat. The Gothic facade of the Orvieto Cathedral is one of the great masterpieces of the late Middle Ages. The most exciting and eye-catching part is its golden frontage, which is decorated by large bas-reliefs and statues with the symbols, angel, ox, lion, eagle, of the evangelists created by Maitani and collaborators, between 1325 and 1330, standing on the cornice above the sculptured panels on the piers. The cathedral consists of a nave with 6 bays and 2 aisles, and is cruciform in shape. The concept has deliberately been left uncluttered and spacious. The interior, like the exterior, is decorated with alternative rows of basalt and travertine but only to a height of about 1.5 meters. The rows above them were painted in alternative rows of black and white stripes in the late 19th century. The cylindrical columns also consist of alternate rows of travertine and basalt. Their shape and ornamentation evolved during the construction of the cathedral, as well as the decoration of the capitals. The alabaster panes in the bottom parts of the aisle windows keep the interior cool during the fierce Italian summer, while the neo-Gothic stained glass in the upper parts of the windows date from 1886 to 1891 and were designed by Francesco Moretti.
The Palazzi Diali is a group of palaces in Genoa, northern Italy. On July 13, 2006, 42 of 80 subscribers to Palazzi Diali or Rolls Palaces were entered by the Special Committee UNESCO meeting in Vilnius, Lithuania, between the members. About €10 million was spent on their restoration in the 1990s with the use of public and private capital. The Raleigh Rolls were created in 1576. Open to the aristocratic senatry founded by Prince and Admiral Andrea Doria, which through his constitutional reform introduced oligarchic rule and the subsequent insertion into the Genoese sovereignty of Spain. The thoroughness with which Raleigh were designed and completed only a few decades after the Great Urban Restructuring decided by Doria, concentrated particularly between 1536 and 1553 between the 14th-century strong Genoese walls, is still clear and documented evidence of Genoa during its golden century. What was a city of shipowners, merchants and bankers in a position to give the Republic a role in maritime absolute dominance over the political and commercial Mediterranean Sea, was also an important crossroads for princes and kings, diplomats and ecclesiastical authority. It is also catalogued all of the approximately 150 homes that were mandatory, pre-Satabile, for hosting notable people. In most cases these buildings still exist, as are the same people who led and still lead critics to look at Genoa at the time as a Republican palace, a true contradiction in terms, from which emerge horizons of housing history and urban history, rather than one architecture. The homes included in the Raleigh are divided into 3 categories according to size, beauty and importance and were used according to these criteria to accommodate cardinals, princes and viceroys, feudal lords, ambassadors and governors. To each category of guest, a compass point corresponded to the names of owners who competed by law to support and honor the official visits. After the 2006 Raleigh recognition by UNESCO as part of the World Heritage, Genova Municipality started in 2009 Raleigh Days, dedicated to the free visit of public and private buildings. A different itinerary is proposed each time, and art students, architects and professional guides help the visitors, offering guided tours, almost all for free.
The Palladian villas of the Veneto are villas designed by architect Andrea Palladio, all of whose buildings were erected in the Veneto, the mainland region of northeastern Italy then under the political control of the Venetian Republic. Most villas are listed by UNESCO as part of a World Heritage Site named City of Vicenza, and the Palladian villas of the Veneto. The term villa was used to describe a country house. Often rich families in the Veneto also had a house in town called palazzo. In most cases the owners name their palazzi and villas with the family surname, hence there is both a Palazzo Chiericotti in Vicenza, and a Villa Chiericotti in the countryside. Similarly there is a Ca' Foscari in Venice, and a Villa Foscari in the countryside. Somewhat confusingly there are multiple Villas Pisani, including 2 by Palladio. UNESCO inscribed the site on the World Heritage List in 1994. At first the site was called Vicenza, City of Palladio, and only buildings in the immediate area of Vicenza were included. Various types of buildings were represented in the original site, which included the Teatro Olimpico, some palazzi and a few villas. However, most of Palladio's surviving villas laid outside the site. That is why in 1996 the site was expanded, hence City of Vicenza and the Palladian villas of the Veneto. Its present name reflects the fact that it includes villas designed by Palladio throughout the Veneto. By 1550, Palladio had produced a whole group of villas, whose scale and decoration can be seen as closely matching the wealth and social standing of the owners. The powerful and very rich Pisani, bankers and Venetian patricians, had huge vaults and a loggia facade realized with stone piers and rusticated Doric pilasters. The, briefly, wealthy minor noble and salt tax farmer Taddeo Gazzato and his villa at Bertasina had pilasters executed in brick, though the capitals and bases were carved in stone. Biagio Saraceno at Finale had a loggia with 3 arched bays, but without any architectural order. In the Villa Saraceno, as in the Villa Poiana, Palladio was able to give presence and dignity to an exterior simply by the placing and orchestration of windows, pediments, loggia, arcades. His less wealthy patrons must have appreciated the possibility of being able to enjoy impressive buildings without having to spend much on stone and stone carving.
The Pantheon is a former Roman temple, now a church, in Rome, Italy, on the site of an earlier temple commissioned by Marcus Agrippa during the reign of Augustus, 27 BC to 14 AD. The present building was completed by the Emperor Hadrian and probably dedicated about 126 AD. He retained Agrippa's original inscription, which has confused its date of construction as the original Pantheon burned down, so it is not certain when the present one was built. The building is circular with a portico of large granite Corinthian columns, 8 in the first rank and 2 groups of 4 behind, under a pediment. A rectangular vestibule links the porch to the rotunda, which is under a coffered concrete dome, with a central opening, oculus, to the sky. Almost 2,000 years after it was built, the Pantheon's dome is still the world's largest unreinforced concrete dome. The height to the oculus and the diameter of the interior circle are the same, 43 meters. The square in front of the Pantheon is called Piazza della Rotunda. The Pantheon's large circular domed cella, with a conventional temple portico front, was unique in Roman architecture. Nevertheless, it became a standard exemplar when classical styles were revived, and has been copied many times by later architects. The interior of the dome was possibly intended to symbolize the arched vault of the heavens. The oculus at the dome's apex and the entry door are the only natural sources of light in the interior. Throughout the day, the light from the oculus moves around this space in a reverse sundial effect. The oculus also serves as a cooling and ventilation method. During storms, a drainage system below the floor handles the rain that falls through the oculus. The dome features sunken panels, coffers, in 5 rings of 28. This evenly spaced layout was difficult to achieve and, it is presumed, had symbolic meaning, either numerical, geometric, or lunar. In antiquity, the coffers may have contained bronze stars, rosettes, or other ornaments. Circles and squares form the unifying theme of the interior design. The checkerboard floor pattern contrasts with the concentric circles of square coffers in the dome. Each zone of the interior, from floor to ceiling, is subdivided according to a different scheme. As a result, the interior decorative zones do not line up.
Piazza del Campo is the principal public space of the historic center of Siena, Tuscany, Italy, and is regarded as one of Europe's greatest medieval squares. It is renowned worldwide for its beauty and architectural integrity. The Palazzo Palaco and its Torre del Ninja, as well as various palazzi signorile surround the shell-shaped piazza. At the northwest edge is the Fonda. The twice-a-year horse race, Palio di Siena, is held around the edges of the piazza. The open site was a marketplace established before the 13th century on a sloping site near the meeting point of the 3 hillside communities that coalesced to form Siena, the Castellar, the San Martino and the Camellia. Siena may have had earlier Etruscan settlements, but it was not a considerable Roman settlement, and the Campo does not lie on the site of the Roman Forum, as is sometimes suggested. It was paved in 1349 in fishbone-patterned red brick with 9 lines of travertine, which divide the piazza into 10 sections, radiating from the mouth of the Gavinone, the central water drain, in front of the Palazzo Palaco. The number of divisions is held to be symbolic of the rule of the 9 Novci, who laid out the Campo and governed Siena at the height of its medieval splendor between 1292 to 1355. The Campo was and remains the focal point of public life in the city. From the piazza, 11 narrow shaded streets radiate into the city. The Fonda, Fountain of the World, was built in 1419 as an endpoint of the system of conduits bringing water to the city's center, replacing an earlier fountain completed about 1342 when the water conduits were completed. Under the direction of the Committee of 9, many miles of tunnels were constructed to bring water and aqueducts to fountains and thence to drain to the surrounding fields. The present fountain, a center of attraction for the many tourists, is in the shape of a rectangular basin that is adorned on 3 sides with many bas-reliefs with the Madonna surrounded by the classical and the Christian virtues, emblematic of good government under the patronage of the Madonna.
The Piazza dei Miracoli is a walled 8.87-hectare area located in Pisa, Tuscany, Italy, recognized as an important center of European medieval art and one of the finest architectural complexes in the world. Considered sacred by the Catholic Church, its owner, the square is dominated by 4 great religious edifices: the Pisa Cathedral, the Pisa Baptistery, the Campanile, and the Camposanto Monumentale. In 1987, the whole square was declared a UNESCO World Heritage Site. The heart of the Piazza del Duomo is the Duomo, the medieval cathedral of the Archdiocese of Pisa, dedicated to Santa Maria Assunta, Saint Mary of the Assumption. The cathedral has 2 aisles on either side of the nave. The transept consists of 3 aisles. The church is known also as the Primatial, the Archbishop of Pisa being a primate since 1092. Its construction began in 1064 by the architect Vichetto. It set the model for the distinctive Pisan Romanesque style of architecture. The mosaics of the interior, as well as the pointed arches, show a strong Byzantine influence. The facade, of gray marble and white stone set with discs of colored marble, was built by a master named Reynaldo, as indicated by an inscription above the middle door, Reynaldus Prudens Operator. The massive bronze main doors were made in the workshops of Bologna, replacing the original doors destroyed in a fire in 1595. The original central door was of bronze, made around 1180 by Bonanno Pisano, while the other 2 were probably of wood. However, worshippers have never used the facade doors to enter, instead entering by way of the Porta di San Ranieri, St. Ranieri's door, in front of the Leaning Tower, built around 1180 by Bernardo Pisano. Above the doors are 4 rows of open galleries with, on top, statues of Madonna with Child, and, on the corners, the 4 evangelists. Also in the facade is found the tomb of Bichetto, on the left side, and an inscription about the foundation of the cathedral, and the victorious battle against the Saracens. At the east end of the exterior, high on a column rising from the gable, is a modern replica of the Pisa Griffin, the largest Islamic metal sculpture known, the original of which was placed there probably in the 11th or 12th century, and is now in the Cathedral Museum. The interior is faced with black and white marble, and has a gilded ceiling and a frescoed dome. It was largely redecorated after a fire in 1595, which destroyed most of the Renaissance artworks.
Piazza, a town and commune in the province of Siena, in the Val d'Orcia in Tuscany, central Italy, between the towns of Montepulciano and Montalcino, is the touchstone of Renaissance urbanism. In 1996, UNESCO declared the town a World Heritage Site, and in 2004 the entire valley, the Val d'Orcia, was included on the list of UNESCO's World Cultural Landscapes. Before the village was renamed to Piazza, its name was Corsignano. It is first mentioned in documents from the 9th century. Around 1,300 parts of the village became property of the Piccolomini family. After Alberto Diego Piccolomini had been infiefed with the fief of Monterturi in Val d'Orcia by the Emperor Frederick II in 1220. In the 13th century Franciscans settled down in Corsignano. 1405 Corsignano was the birthplace of Aeneas Silvius Piccolomini, a Renaissance humanist born into an exiled Sienese family, who later became Pope Pius II. Once he became Pope, Piccolomini had the entire village rebuilt as an ideal Renaissance town and renamed it after himself to Piazza. Intended as a retreat from Rome, it represents the first application of humanist urban planning concepts, creating an impetus for planning that was adopted in other Italian towns and cities and eventually spread to other European centers. The rebuilding was done by Florentine architect Bernardo Gambarelli, known as Bernardo Rossellino, who may have worked with the humanist and architect Leon Battista Alberti, though there are no documents to prove it for sure. Alberti was in the employ of the papal curia at the time and served as an advisor to Pius. Construction started about 1459. Pope Pius II consecrated the Duomo on August 29, 1462, during his long summer visit. He included a detailed description of the structures in his commentaries, written during the last 2 years of his life.
Pompeii was an ancient Roman town city near modern Naples, in the Campania region of Italy, in the territory of the commune of Pompeii. Pompeii, along with Herculaneum and many villas in the surrounding area, was mostly destroyed and buried under 4 to 6 meters of volcanic ash and pumice in the eruption of Mount Vesuvius in AD 79. Researchers believe that the town was founded in the 7th or 6th century BC by the Ossi or Oscans. It came under the domination of Rome in the 4th century BC, and was conquered and became a Roman colony in 80 BC after it joined an unsuccessful rebellion against the Roman Republic. By the time of its destruction, 160 years later, its population was estimated at 11,000 people, and the city had a complex water system, an amphitheater, a gymnasium, and a port. The eruption destroyed the city, killing its inhabitants and burying it under tons of ash. Evidence for the destruction originally came from a surviving letter by Pliny the Younger, who saw the eruption from a distance and described the death of his uncle Pliny the Elder, an admiral of the Roman fleet, who tried to rescue citizens. The site was lost for about 1,500 years until its initial rediscovery in 1599 and broader rediscovery almost 150 years later by Spanish engineer Joaquín de Alcubierre in 1748. The objects that lay beneath the city have been preserved for more than a millennium because of the long lack of air and moisture. These artifacts provide an extraordinarily detailed insight into the life of a city during the Pax Romana. During the excavation, plaster was used to fill in the voids in the ash layers that once held human bodies. This allowed archaeologists to see the exact position a person was in when he or she died. Pompeii has been a tourist destination for over 250 years. Today it has UNESCO World Heritage Site status and is one of the most popular tourist attractions in Italy, with approximately 2.5 million visitors every year.
Portofino is an Italian fishing village and holiday resort famous for its picturesque harbor and historical association with celebrity and artistic visitors. It is a commune located in the metropolitan city of Genoa on the Italian Riviera. The town is clustered around its small harbor and is known for the colorfully painted buildings that line the shore. The village is mentioned in a diploma from 986 by Adelaide of Italy, which assigned it to the nearby abbey of San Fructuoso di Capodimonte. In 1171, together with the neighboring Santa Margherita Ligure, it was included in Rapallo's commune jurisdiction. After 1229 it was part of the Republic of Genoa. The town's natural harbor supported a fleet of fishing boats, but was somewhat too cramped to provide more than a temporary safe haven for the growing merchant marine of the Republic of Genoa. In 1409 Portofino was sold to the Republic of Florence by Charles VI of France, but when the latter was ousted from Genoa the Florentines gave it back. In the 15th century it was a fief of families such as the Fisci, Spinola, Adorno, and Doria. In 1815 it became part of the Kingdom of Sardinia, and, from 1861, of the Unified Kingdom of Italy. In the late 19th century, first British, then other Northern European aristocratic tourists began to visit Portofino, which they reached by horse and cart from Santa Margherita Ligure. Aubrey Herbert and Elizabeth von Arnhem were amongst the more famous English people to make the area fashionable. Eventually more expatriates built expensive vacation houses, and by 1950 tourism had supplanted fishing as the town's chief industry, and the waterfront was a continuous ring of restaurants and cafes. Main sites include Statue of Christ of the Abyss, placed underwater on 29 August 1954 in the inlet at a depth of 17 meters. This statue was placed to protect fishermen and scuba divers, and in memory of Dario Gonzatti. Sculpted by Guido Galletti, it represents Christ in the act of blessing, while looking up towards the sky with open arms in sign of peace. Castello Brown, 16th century, Church of St. Martin, Divo Martino, 12th century, Church of St. George, housing some saints' relics, Oratory of Santa Maria Assunta, in Gothic style.
Positano is a village and commune on the Amalfi coast, Costiera Amalfitana, in Campania, Italy, mainly in an enclave in the hills leading down to the coast. Positano was a port of the Amalfi Republic in medieval times, and prospered during the 16th and 17th centuries. By the mid-19th century, however, the town had fallen on hard times. More than half the population emigrated, mostly to America. Positano was a relatively poor fishing village during the first half of the 20th century. It began to attract large numbers of tourists in the 1950s, especially after John Steinbeck published his essay about Positano in Harper's Bazaar in May, 1953. The Church of Santa Maria Assunta features a dome made of majolica tiles as well as a 13th-century Byzantine icon of a Black Madonna. According to local legend, the icon had been stolen from Byzantium and was being transported by pirates across the Mediterranean. A terrible storm had blown up in the waters opposite Positano and the frightened sailors heard a voice on board saying "Posa, Posa. Put down. Put down." The precious icon was unloaded and carried to the fishing village and the storm abated. Positano has been featured in several films, including Only You, 1994. And Under the Tuscan Sun, 2003, as well as more recently in Kath and Kim Della, 2012, and being mentioned in the 2009 musical film 9 in the song Cinema Italiano. It also hosts the annual Cartoons on the Bay Festival, at which Pulcinella Awards for Excellence in Animation are presented. From July 1967 and through most of the 1970s, Positano was home to singer-songwriter Sean Phillips and where most of his best-known work was composed. Mick Jagger and Keith Richards from the Rolling Stones wrote the song Midnight Rambler in the cafes of Positano while on vacation. Renowned director and producer Franco Zeffirelli owned the Villa Treville in Positano, where he took residence over a 35-year period and hosted a coterie of literati and stars of the stage and screen. The Villa Treville has since been converted into a 5-star boutique hotel. German pianist Wilhelm Kempff made Positano his summer retreat and there he taught a summer course on the Beethoven piano sonatas and concerti. Positano is also very popular for Limoncello and L'Albertissimo, an alcoholic tipple that can only be found at a small stall at the main harbor.